Hello everybody, I'm Rowan6 with Rowan6 Entertainment, and welcome to a new series, a audiobook series of my fanfiction, The Dragon Hero Dovahkiin. The background art for this fanfiction is created by me. If you're interested in me doing art commissions for you, the link to my business Discord is down below. There's also a link to my community Discord, as well as the fanfiction link. Thank you, and enjoy the video.
Chapter 19. Izuku was waiting in the classroom for the first lesson to start, but as he did, a deep frown settled on his face. The first lesson of the day was Hero 101, which was the focus of his worry. Before class started, he was sorting through the approval forms for their support equipment and the hero outfits drawn up by the students, all of which had been signed off and approved by the HPSC. That wasn't even mentioning the 4 members of the UA Board of Directors. It was quite obvious that some of the items were designed to be flashy over functionality. In fact, some of the equipment seemed to be designed to sexualize some of the female students. The thing that made all of this worse was the more dangerous support gear authorized, in particular, the gauntlets for one Katsuki Bakugo. The grenade-shaped bracers were designed to store his sweat, allowing for a buildup and release of enough explosive force to level a building. That wasn't even mentioning the frag grenades he carried, also powered by his sweat, that were a danger to himself and anyone around him. Seriously, whose bright idea was it to give children, who have zero combat experience with lethal weaponry that would easily kill, and hero costumes that provide zero practical protection? It's a good thing he insisted on the first lesson being a costume check and basic combat training. It would allow him to confiscate the more lethal weapons given to literal children who have no experience dealing with such weaponry in the first place. In fact, such support gear violates certain laws that require specific training before they're even authorized to carry such items into the field. Palming his face and massaging his growing headache, Izuku looked up at the clock on the wall and saw there were a little less than 10 minutes before class was supposed to start. With a sigh, he stood up out of his seat and walked over to the podium to grab everyone's attention. But before he could announce what they were supposed to do today and what was expected of them, the door slammed open. "I am here," coming through the door like a normal person. All Might bellows out as he, definitely does not enters the classroom like any normal person, but instead like a big damn buffoon. Before the class could make a single noise in response to All Might's presence, Izuku allowed a small portion of his aura to leak out. It wasn't exactly killer intent, he was just leaking pure, unadulterated power to grab everyone's attention, including All Might. Once he was certain he held the attention of the class, and the idiot, he spoke up. "Now, before you all start losing your minds and speaking out of turn, I have a couple of things I need to go over before class starts," Izuku says before turning his attention to All Might, and continuing on. "Firstly, All Might, you are early, and please stop yelling at the top of your lungs, otherwise, you could disturb the other classes. Secondly, I expect you to pay for the damage you caused to the door." Izuku draws everybody's attention to the door, a large crack running from floor to ceiling now inlaid in the door frame, also showing the splintering of the metal door itself. Sorry about that, I guess I was a little too excited," All Might said sheepishly. "Obviously. Anyway, we're going to go over what we're doing today in class, so I expect you to listen," Izuku said before being interrupted by All Might. "Oh yes, since I will be leading the class for today, I made sure to create my own lesson plan. No need to worry, I have it all figured out," All Might said boastfully. but before All Might could continue, Izuku cut in. And what gave you the idea that you were leading the lesson plan today? Were you not listening during the staff meeting? Ryukyu and Mirako are in charge of heroics lessons. Izuku says, dumbfounded at the man's stupidity. Oh yes, you are right, but Ryukyu and Mirako are busy dealing with something at the moment, so I decided to step up and take charge of today's lesson. All Might said with his trademark smile plastered on his face. The man's sheer audacity caused Izuku to pinch his eyebrows in frustration. Taking a deep breath, Izuku quickly took hold of himself before All Might could do something stupid before speaking again. First of all, why was I not informed by either Ryukyu, Mirako, or Nezu? Second of all, you cannot teach All Might, you do not have a teacher's license, which makes it illegal for you to do so. This is why you've been designated as an assistant teacher and guest speaker. Izuku's exasperated voice rang out, his headache growing more and more. Nonsense, why would I need a teaching license when I am the #1 hero? My experience and skills outrank any teacher here. As for why you have not been informed, I was informed of the situation so I could relay it to you, obviously. Now, if you do not mind, I have a class to teach. All Might said, and Izuku frowned and began to grow more aggravated than he was annoyed. All Might, were you not listening to what I just said? You cannot teach a class without a teaching license. Unless you have a signed statement from Nezu stating that you have been given authorization, I am obligated as a licensed teacher to ask you to leave. Izuku says, a bulging vein of anger visible on his forehead. This caused All Might's smile to falter for only a second as he looked over the class full of students. He noticed that a lot of them looked at him in confusion. Melissa looked up at him with disappointment and a bit of frustration. Not wanting to damage his relationship with Melissa any further than it already was, he quickly plastered his signature smile back onto his face. Seeing that All Might was officially done trying to take over the class, Izuku turned once more to address them. Apologies for the interruptions. Luckily, there's a protocol in place just in case this happens, so this class won't be cancelled due to me having a teacher's license for this subject. However, seeing as I have not heard from Ryukyu or Mirako, I will be acting as the substitute since I am already versed in what we'll be doing today. Now, allow me to explain what we're doing today. Then, while you're all in the locker room changing, I'll contact Principal Nezu so I can see what's up with Ryukyu and Mirako. Moving on, today's lesson is a costume/support gear check as well as basic hand-to-hand training, alongside some quirkless sparring. Now, go get changed into your hero costumes and head to Training Field Alpha. Oh, and Bakugo, do not equip any of your support gear. Izuku says, pressing the button on a remote control that reveals briefcases slotted into the wall, holding the students' hero costumes. Before anyone could stand up and grab their assigned briefcases, Katsuki Bakugo began yelling. Why the fuck am I not allowed to use my support gear, you stupid Deku? Katsuki roars out in feral rage. First off, do not call me Deku, you will refer to me as either Mr. Midoriya or Midoriya-sensei. Insult me again, and you will find yourself in detention. Now, as for the question about your support gear firstly requires specialized training before you're even allowed to use it. That includes an explosives handling license, and requires you to go through the full course for it before I even think about allowing you to legally use any of it. Izuku says calmly, as if he were explaining something to a small child. This caused him to rage even further, but before he could yell out again, the shy voice of NYX Tokoyami spoke up as she appeared from her brother's side in a modified female UA uniform. Why would he need all of that? Are the items he was planning on using dangerous or something? NYX asked, her voice shy. She was still getting used to thinking about herself as a normal person and not as a quirk. Previously, she was not allowed to ask any questions during class, teachers wouldn't call on her, straight up ignore her, or ask her brother to keep her under control. So she was understandably a little nervous when she decided to ask a question. Izuku, noticing the nervous look on her face, gave her a gentle smile, which seemed to calm her down a bit. He was quite happy to see that she was becoming more comfortable about asking questions. Since yesterday, she had been far more shy than normal and very nervous about what her parents' reaction would be. After Izuku showed his findings to both of her parents, they were quite concerned and upset. The doctor who examined their children told them that NYX was just a sentient quirk. And now, because of that, they had unintentionally and regretfully mentally scarred their daughter, one they didn't even know they had. It took him half an hour to explain the plan designed to help their daughter. It was simple. The plan included therapy sessions with Hound Dog alongside specialized quirk training with Izuku. This was further compounded by the fact that nobody knew what Fumikage's quirk was or how it would affect their daughter. Shaking his head to dislodge those thoughts, Izuku decided to answer her before the rabid Pomeranian could explode. Simple, his support gear, if improperly handled, can be entirely lethal. Take the 2 gauntlets he designed, they accumulate and store his sweat in large quantities, he can then release it all at once for one massive blast. A singular explosion from one of those gauntlets has the explosive capability of demolishing an entire building and killing anybody right in front of it if he is not properly trained. Not to mention the fragmentation grenades that also use his sweat as a basis, as he requested. As such, he's going to need an federal explosives license, which requires him to undergo at least 6 months worth of training and psychological evaluation before we can issue one. Which reminds me, Miss Yayorozu, until you get your own license, I am forbidding you from making any explosive devices. Izuku says with a smile as he explains to the class. NYX and Momo nod their heads at their teacher's words. After no one else had any more questions, he dismissed them and started dialing Nedzu. It only rang once before the principal picked up. Hello, young Izuku, I'm assuming you're calling because of the absence of Ryuko. Nedzu says the second that he picks up the phone. That's correct, I would like to know what happened, it's unlike her to be late. Izuku says curiously. Oh yes, I was only notified a moment ago about a tip from an unknown source claiming there was an explosive device smuggled into her agency. Mirako is with her, assisting in the evacuation of the area. Nedzu says, but hearing this makes Izuku freeze in place. His mind sped up as he attempted to analyze every word that left Nedzu's mouth and every possibility that could happen. But there was only one question in his mind that needed an answer. You said you were notified a moment ago. Can you confirm if that's true? How did All Might have enough time to create an alternative lesson plan as well as to set it up before you were notified? Izuku asked seriously. What you are suggesting is a very serious accusation. But rest assured, I have every intention of looking into this. Come see me after school, and we will discuss this further. For now, keep an eye on him. Nedzu said seriously, like Izuku expected, he immediately understood what his question implied and was already moving to investigate. and with quick acknowledgement from Izuku, he hung up. Izuku continued with his stride until he got into the changing room, and with a speed that surpassed the students, he strapped on his gear and walked out. Realizing quickly that he was the first one out and All Might was just standing there, he approached him quickly. "Okay, so here is how this is going to work. All Might, I'm in charge, and you are acting as my assistant alongside Lydia. If you do not mind getting the training equipment that is on this list from storage closet B, which is right over there, that will be nice." Izuku said to All Might as he handed him a list of equipment. All Might looked insulted at the request but, begrudgingly, obliged. All Might didn't want to rock the boat any more than he already had. It was rather obvious to him that he'd already made a bad impression upon the students. Especially considering the looks that they gave him when he attempted to take over the class with the authority of the number one hero. Hopefully, he can play it off as him attempting to help out instead of attempting something heavy-handed. He had to admit to himself that he was quite angry that his simple plan failed. He was sure he had thought of everything, but it fell apart immediately, and all because he did not have a teaching license, and the boy now ordering him around did. He even called upon some favors from the HPSC so they could tie up Ryukyu and Mirako and prevent them from teaching today's class. He didn't know what they were going to do, and he honestly didn't care as long as they weren't teaching today. All he really cared about was getting the first class to himself so he could prove to Melissa that being quirkless would only be a hindrance in her career. He was hoping that once he proved that, he could valiantly offer his quirk as the solution, as well as his training. But the only way for that to happen was for her to go up against somebody with a powerful enough quirk and see the gap that was between them. He was planning on using the hero versus villains test that he did in his second year at UA. It was a simple exercise that he could rig, so she fought the most powerful of her class. Now, everything had fallen apart because he failed to account for the quirkless brat that he met all those months ago, to have a teaching position at UA and a teaching license, no less. It still made no sense to him that somebody like him managed to do that in the first place. Like, seriously, what was Nezu thinking? But then again, the boy's analytical skills were nothing to scoff at, especially after seeing his notebook. Perhaps Nezu caught wind of his skills, and during that time, he cultivated him into being a teacher as well as a hero. No matter, he will just have to find another opportunity that proves that she needs his power and put that brat in his place. All Might thought about all of this quietly as he went to the storage closet to grab the equipment on the list. It was only a couple of minutes later when the class finally exited the locker rooms, all suited up. And as Izuku saw them approach, his headache began to turn into a migraine at the sight of their costumes. Even though he examined the costumes on paper, seeing them in person was a totally different experience. Most of them needed a complete and comprehensive overhaul, while others were going to need materials swapped around. Either way, he was going to need to talk to Nezu and Power Loader about the support companies that made these costumes. At least he didn't have to worry about Melissa, Lydia, and Serena's costumes. He was thankful he made Serena's and Lydia's himself and helped in fabricating Melissa's. And now that he had the chance to see her in it, he had to admit that Melissa looked really good. Melissa was wearing a modified version of her apprentice robes. The robes were dyed a dark blue with red accents. Adorning the robes were multiple light armor additions strategically placed to provide better protection without restricting movement or flexibility. She was wearing a classic wizard hat that matched the color of her robes. There were multiple gadgets of different kinds strapped to her that he knew were made with a mixture of modern-day technology and magic. Slung on her back was a modified repeating light crossbow, and a pair of daggers was strapped to her hip. Izuku made sure every piece of equipment that she used was safe for her to use. He even gave her private lessons so she did not accidentally hurt anybody with anything she planned on using. Melissa wanted to use nothing but the gadgets she made alongside the magic she learned from Izuku, but he knew that her mana reserves were quite small at the moment. So until she was able to grow them further, it was better to make sure she had a backup weapon that fit her fighting style. This was the sole reason he taught her how to use her daggers and crossbow. Thanks to her hobby and previous training in acrobatics, Izuku taught her a fighting style he picked up from one of the members of the Thieves' Guild. This turned her flexibility and her skills in acrobatics into a deadly form of combat. Even Melissa had to admit that she enjoyed learning that particular fighting style. Looking around, Izuku analyzed the rest of the group to see what he was dealing with. Once he was satisfied with the game plan, he got the class's attention before speaking. "All right, quiet down, now, I know you probably don't want to hear this, but after seeing your costumes, as your classmate and as your teacher, I cannot in good conscience allow you to wear those costumes into any combat scenario. Most of you need a full redesign, some of you need simple material swaps," Izuku said, causing everybody to look at him with clear shock. "Wah, but we look awesome, why would we need to change our costumes so much?" Mina says in a mixture of outrage and shock. Something that a lot of the other students end up vocalizing their agreement with. Hearing this, Izuku decided to explain. "There are many reasons why your costumes are going to need to be redesigned, but I have to admit it's only going to be half of you. The rest of you are going to need, at the least, material changes and some minor alterations. But unfortunately, there are some of you I'm going to insist need a complete redesign when it comes to your costumes. These people are going to be Momo Yaoyorozu, Toru Hagakure, NYX Tokoyami, Tinya Itza, and Eijiro Kirishima. The rest of you can go for a complete redesign if you so wish, but I'm going to have to insist on a material change either way," Izuku said calmly, which put everybody back up in arms again. Izuku, deciding to put an end to their outburst, put two fingers in his mouth to create an ear-piercing whistle to grab everybody's attention. Once they were calm and their eyes were on him, he spoke up again. "It seems like I'm going to have to point out every single problem with your costumes, otherwise, you're not going to understand in the slightest. We'll start with the most obvious here, and that is Toru Hagakure. According to Miss Hagakure's costume request forms, her costume consists of only boots and gloves. Now tell me, how is that an acceptable costume? In fact, I have no idea how this even got approved, especially when there are materials out there, such as DNA-infused cloth that would work with her quirk." Speaking of DNA-infused cloth, Momo Yaoyorozu, Eijiro Kirishima, and NYX Tokoyami would benefit from their hero suits being made from this. As of now, their outfits are mostly just skin and some strands of cloth barely hiding their modesty, Izuku said, and as the groups of students finally realized what he was getting at, they started looking at their own costumes. But as they did so, Mina decided to ask another question that caught the attention of the class once again. "What about Itza? He looks like his armor protects him quite well, why would he need a redesign, and what about my suit? Is there anything wrong with it?" Mina asked curiously. "Firstly, Itza's armor does not offer him adequate protection. The armor he's wearing is made of a lightweight aluminum alloy that provides zero protection against blades or projectile weaponry. It was likely built that way with the consideration of his speed-type quirk. Due to this, his armor needs to be as lightweight as possible. Meaning, his armor is only going to cause him to die a very early, very painful death. It is going to crumple in on itself like a shitty tin can the second he trips or crashes into an object. There's also the Izuku said before being cut off by Itza. I must object to all these baseless accusations. My armor design has been passed down in my family for generations, and as such, does not need to be changed or deviated in any way. In any attempt to do so, I will get my family lawyer involved and Ida said before being cut off by Izuku. First off, do not interrupt me again, or I will expel you. Secondly, I do not care if your great-great-grandfather decided to wear that aluminum coffin of yours, I will not let you wear it. I have already spoken with Power Loader and Principal Nizu about this, and they have given me full authorization to bump you down to Gen Ed if you refuse to cooperate. This is not up for discussion or debate. When it comes to student safety, we take our jobs very, very seriously. Izuku said, which only caused Itza to scowl at him, but before he could say anything, Izuku continued. Now, Mina, as for your second question, your outfit is going to need a material change. I noticed that your outfit isn't acid-proof. I also recommend that your outfit be given some extra armor, possibly Kevlar composite lining, so you can defend against knives and low-caliber ammunition. I would also recommend extra storage, such as a utility belt for basic medical supplies and possibly a device to neutralize your acid in the case of accidents. Izuku said, to which Mina nodded, accepting his suggestions and likely knowing he was right. Now, I want all of you to line up so we can go over your costumes one at a time. After that, we will move on to basic hand-to-hand combat training. Izuku said, receiving replies of affirmation as they got into line. 15 minutes later. It took a total of 15 minutes to get through the entire class's costume designs and to schedule a time after school for them to meet with Power Loader about their costume designs. Melissa was a great help in this process since she was able to give suggestions due to her experience with support gear. When all was said and done, he sent them all back to the locker room to get changed into their gym uniforms. He deemed none of their hero outfits combat ready. Upon their return, they lined up in front of him yet again. Wasting no time, he decided to begin their hand-to-hand combat lessons. After determining who had prior combat experience, of which only 3 of them had any, he sent All Might to teach those who had 0 combat experience some basic hand-to-hand. Izuku and Lydia sparred with the 3 students who claimed they had prior combat training to test and see where they stood. These 3 students were Melissa, Momo, and Bakugo. Izuku and Lydia already knew what Melissa was capable of due to their joint training. Therefore, Lydia took Momo off to the side to test her skills. Izuku took Bakugo to another corner to test him. Lydia really wanted to test Bakugo herself, but Izuku was able to convince her to allow him to do it. She really did not want to allow it, but conceded since they were going to be wearing quirk-suppressing bracelets to prevent accidents. It's not that she didn't believe he couldn't handle himself. She was afraid of the boy setting off one of his triggers, an occurrence that could cause Izuku to slip up and accidentally kill the rabid Pomeranian. As the 2 walked off towards the mat, Melissa and Lydia could not help but worry about the feral grin Bakugo was wearing. However, their worries were quickly washed away when they saw the calm and collected face of Izuku. When Bakugo saw Izuku's face, it only served to make him angrier. The moment Bakugo heard the signal to begin, he charged forward with the right hook. Right before the attack could connect with Izuku's face, the green-haired boy caught his arm. He then proceeded to throw the blonde over his shoulder, and right after, he pinned him to the ground. Bakugo thrashed and bucked like a wild animal attempting to escape the hold. But Izuku's grip was absolute, and Bakugo only stopped when the cold and calm voice of Izuku reached his ears. "Your anger blinds you, Bakugo. If you continue to let it control you, instead of you controlling it, you will fail to save anyone. And more importantly, you will fail to defeat me." Izuku spoke in a tone that only a disappointed teacher could hold while lecturing a student. Pushing off Bakugo, Izuku quickly moved to the other end of the mat while Bakugo rose to his feet. It was obvious to Izuku that Bakugo had no intention of listening to his advice, only compounded once he was on his feet and charging at him blindly, practically foaming at the mouth in fury. Sidestepping a left hook, Izuku proceeded to sweep his legs from under him and knock him onto his ass. As Bakugo quickly got back up, he started attacking Izuku in a completely blind fury, abandoning any form of reasoning in his reckless assault. Izuku calmly countered, dodged, and blocked each attack while giving pointers and criticism on how he could improve, something that seemed to only infuriate Bakugo further. Seeing that Bakugo was not taking any of his advice, becoming but a seething ball of rage at this point, he knocked him onto his ass one more time before exiting the mat and ending the match. That did not, however, sit well with Bakugo, and he decided to make his displeasure known. "Fight me, Deku, we're not done here." Bakugo shouts, his mind clouded by rage as he takes off the bracelets and starts using his quirk in an attempt to intimidate him. "We are done, Bakugo. It's obvious that you were getting far too angry and worked up over a simple spar. Think over the pointers and suggestions while I observe the spar between Miss Yayorozu and Lydia," Izuku said nonchalantly as he walked over to Lydia and Momo. This caused Bakugo to see red as he charged at Izuku with an explosion. Before the attack could connect, a black whip wrapped around him in such a way that if he used his quirk, he would only hurt himself. Turning around, he was greeted by the sight of Midnight and the 4 prep course students whom she was escorting. But Bakugo did not notice them, he was too busy attempting to break out of his bonds like a rabid animal. This interaction gained the attention of every student, even All Might looked like he wanted to say something, but before he could, Izuku spoke up. "It's obvious that you're too volatile to stay in the hero course, and because of that, you leave me no choice. Katsuki Bakugo, you are expelled from the hero course. You will be placed in general education, and you will be disallowed from returning to the hero course until you get your anger under control. I am also going to put you under mandatory anger management classes with Hound Dog. Report to the principal's office immediately, and if I see you attack anybody again, I will make sure you're not just expelled entirely from UA but blacklisted from every hero school in the country. Nemuri, you can let him go, and thank you again for bringing the prep course students here, I really appreciate it," Izuku said, and after Bakugo was let go, he stormed off to the locker rooms in obvious anger. Once the boy was gone, Nemuri spoke up. "I have no idea why you didn't expel him completely, Izu. Especially after what he just tried to do," Nemuri said, obviously frustrated with the whole situation. She knew that her boyfriend had his reasons, but after she learned what he did to him as well as that pink-haired girl, he shouldn't have been given a chance at being a hero, let alone attempting to be number one. Izuku sighs, I know that it might seem like an undercut to you, but if I expel him completely from UA and blacklist him from being a hero, I have no doubt in my mind he will turn to villainy, and with a quirk like his, he could cause a lot of damage. Hopefully, this will be a wake-up call for him, and the sessions with Hound Dog will allow us to reform him into a decent hero. If that doesn't work, his staying at UA will allow us to monitor him to make sure he doesn't do anything stupid. Izuku said, and after hearing his explanation, Nemuri couldn't help but agree with his reasoning. Before Nemuri left to do her own thing, she kissed Izuku in front of all the students, something that shocked all of them. After she left, Izuku got back to work, making sure to keep the lesson on track.
Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!